3. Hey, good morning. Welcome to Nasdaq IR Insight Live. I'm your host, Will Briganti, and joining me today as my guest is Jack Menke. Jack is a senior analyst here at Nasdaq IR Solutions, and he covers technology, media, and telecom. Jack, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
All right, so obviously a lot of things happening in the TMT sectors.
Right.
So let's get into it. What are some of the key highlights that are going on in the market that you're looking at?
Yeah, so I know, let's just kind of briefly touch on telecom and media because
Sure.
it's kind of almost one story.
Okay.
One conversation that we've had over the past year almost has been just M&A activity, and the Sprint T-Mobile conversation has finally come to fruition. It's still pending approval, but that's really kind of been the one significant storyline that's kind of like finally closed, depending on the approval process.
Right.
But finally, T-Mobile and Time Warner deal has finally closed due to regulatory approval, but that has really spurred on even more M&A activity in the media space. And now just with all of these legacy media companies kind of in this pool of trying to compete with Netflix,
Right.
now you're starting to see Comcast, Disney bidding more for Fox assets.
Right.
So I don't think there's been a final winner. I think Disney is slightly ahead just given their increased offer over the past couple of weeks.
Their offer.
Yeah, so it's
that's right.
again, that's the conversation that we're going to have to kind of continue to going forward, just
right.
with depending on what Fox decides to do.
Yeah, and those assets that Fox has, that's I mean, they're sitting on top of a substantial kind of content hoard there. So they've got the Simpsons assets that are in there.
Exactly.
Fox Television distribution, right? Yeah.
It's really going to round out, I think, what Netflix has really taken away from the subscriber base
Right.
for some of these companies. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Okay. But I think the biggest story really has been the tech sell-off from yesterday, especially. So if we kind of look at this narrative of the trade war between China and U.S., that has obviously been something that has really developed over the past couple of months. And if we kind of trace the origins of it, really tech has been sort of insulated from some of the major headlines. So you start to see Trump starting to attack steel stocks and imposing tariffs there, and now it's going into cars and agriculture products, and really tech hasn't seen that much effect for the most part. But if you look at April, that's when the Commerce Department instituted a ban for China telecom company ZTE from buying U.S. parts for 7 years, and that was really kind of the very first instance of the trade war conversation starting to affect the tech industry. It's affected some semiconductors here and there and some networking optical manufacturers, but it really hasn't kind of blown over just because semiconductors have really been performing well since earnings at the end of April. But yesterday, I think, was pretty significant news just because now the U.S. Treasury Department is drafting curbs or limits for firms that have at least 25% Chinese ownership from investing in companies that have, quote, industrially significant technology. And really that's just affecting the entire industry. So that's really been the first direct threat for the industry, and that's why we saw a significant sell-off for yesterday. And just for perspective, the president has the power to block transactions or seize assets, and it uses a bill passed from 1977 if the U.S. is felt to be under a severe or unusual threat.
This is CFIUS, is that right?
I forget the exact name, but the last time that this kind of power was enacted or used was after 9/11, when in order to cut off funding for possible funding for terrorist organizations.
Right, of course,
So to have that type of power being instituted now in a trade war kind of debate, it's really just extraordinary times. Just what has been happening with all the talks with the trade war.
Well, we'll definitely have to keep notice of that. And my final question for you, Jack, today is, what are you hearing from the investor relations community amongst some of your clients in the TMT sectors? What is their sort of mindset going into the next earnings season, for example?
Yeah, I mean, that's only 3 to 4 weeks away. I think what you are starting to see is, just given the sell-off yesterday, if you look at the S&P 500 tech sector, highlighting some of the larger tech companies in the S&P 500, that has actually turned negative for the year. but the Nasdaq Composite is actually still up about it's actually negative for the month of June.
Okay.
So still up positive for the year.
For the year.
But the Nasdaq Composite is actually positive by about a little more than 1% for the month of June. And what we're really seeing is strength in small cap companies. So I think you're really starting to see a lot of these
small cap tech, you're saying.
So yeah, small cap tech, exactly.
Yeah.
Really for the past month, small cap, especially small cap growth names, which will usually be some of the more tech based names.
These are like software, SaaS companies, is that
exactly,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, they definitely do. You do have some small cap companies in semiconductors and IT services, so they're definitely, it covers all the bases for the most part. But really, over the last month, small caps have outperformed and have been making really all-time highs over the past month. So I think you're starting to see some of these potential holders that are sort of overweight. The large cap companies are starting to rotate out, putting money into small caps, and I think that's why you're starting to see a little bit of disparity between some of the performances of large cap tech names versus the small caps. So I think that's something that maybe could play a part in some of the rotation that we might see for Q1 and for Q2. So that's something I think we'll definitely pay attention towards, especially when we get into Q2 earnings.
All right, well, Jack, thank you so much. We'll look forward to having you back on as we get into the midst of earnings season. So thank you very much for that insight.
Sure,
Terrific.
absolutely.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Jack Menke. He's an analyst here at Nasdaq IR Solutions, covering technology, media, and telecom stocks. Thank you so much for tuning in to Nasdaq IR Insight Live. We'll be back to you with another program tomorrow. We're going to talk about strategic capital intelligence and Activist 360. We'll look forward to having you then. Thank you very much, Jack.
Thanks, Will.
All right, have a great day.